Alright, this is probably going to be the last video until I start adding new features, but this is before the initial push, and I wanted to cover how your firearm stats affect the actual handling. So for example, the default stats, we have the weight, ergonomics, and recoil, how those change things with attachments. So here I have the default parts, it's set to 7 kilos, which is excessively heavy. And as you can see, as I go through and I add parts, it does get heavier, the ergonomics change, and all that kind of stuff. So how does this actually really affect it? Well, starting with, let's go ahead and bump this down to like 3.1, I think is about right for a 6.5-pound gun. And I'll just move this back to the reflex sight to make it a little bit easier to have a point of reference. All right, so we have a 6.5-pound gun. I think that, I don't know what it is in kilos. 49 ergonomics and 110, 180 for recoil. If I go to full auto and I would just point at this dot and spray, that is the recoil pattern of that. If I go through and I drop the weight of the gun down, let's say we lighten the gun up by swapping out certain parts like changing the handguard, barrel, and all that fun stuff to where the gun only weighs, I don't know, let's do half that, like 1.2. And then let's give it another look. So we aim at this guy, go to full auto. As you can see, that pattern is much more aggressive. So the recoil is much more intense, and we didn't even touch the recoil values. So obviously, as you go back to 3.2 and you bump these guys up, if you want something obsessive like 500, for example, that's semi, here's full. It just gets a little out of hand. So these are kind of like the good start off values. I need to lower the weight back down. I was working with this in pounds, so I need to set this up to work in terms of kilos and then give the default part weight a rough, I guess, gauge of their weight. So they have good defaults, because currently they really do not. They're kind of all over the place. Next up is ergonomics. So again, this kind of gets influenced by weight as well. So as you can see, there's very little sway. When I turn, there's the weapon lag, and you got some movement, sway, and all that kind of stuff. Now let's say I bump the weight up again, back to 7 pounds, or 7 kilos. The sway is much worse, and so is the movement and all that kind of stuff. That increases. But let's say we were back to 3.2, to where we just had a little bit of sway, and let's say we bump the ergonomics up to something just absurd. So I start aiming. You can see the aim down sight speed increased. The sway got even less, so it's a lot faster. And you have a little bit less movement lag, or movement sway. And I revert that back down to 50, and you can see the aim down sight speed again. It is a little bit slower, but not by much. But the ergonomics, as you add parts, it influences your aim down sight speed and all that kind of stuff. So if I bump that down to like, let's do 1, something really, really low. There's the aim down sight speed. You don't have a whole lot of lag, you definitely have more. And you have horrible movement lag. So this is a terribly, well, just flat out horrible ergonomic gun. So that's kind of how that influences. And it does the same thing for cycling sights as well. So if I add the reflex sight there, and I switch, as you can see, it's pretty quick. It's not bad. And I lower this down, so let's do something a little better. Let's do 5. We'll add the parts. So I aim. The sight speed for switching, as you can tell, is a good bit slower as well. So it influences all of that. And I've already shown you the vertical and horizontal recoil gets influenced by the weight as well. The ergonomics does not influence the recoil, so they're kind of kept separate. And if you want to change the overall aim down sight speed and stuff like that, kind of like their base values, you can do so in the animation instance or blueprint as well, where I have these settings here. So like aim interpolation speed, cycling the sight interpolation speed, and all that kind of stuff. So if I bump this up to like 50, for example, and I aimed, you can see it's pretty much instant. That allows you to tweak the base values. where everything kind of works as you need it. We go through, we have the rest of it. So again, this is interpolation. So the higher it is, the faster it's going to happen. So like with rotation lag, the higher the value here, the less lag you're going to have. Same thing with the motion lag and all that, because it's going to stay more in direct or in line instead of lagging behind. Because again, this is all procedurally done. Next up, we have head aim rotation. I think I've covered that, but basically, I play with two clients. Let me actually view the third person real quick. We see it's at 45 degrees for the Y. As you can see, when I aim, the head tilts out, so it looks like it's actually aiming down the sights. Again, that's done procedurally. I can do something absurd like, why not do 180? That might look kind of interesting. I aim now, and the head goes upside down, because, you know, that, why not? So that's how that works. I think that's pretty much everything in terms of the parts of the system as of right now. I feel like there's some things that I'm missing, but again, you have like all of your, have some example logic here for handling firing between different fire modes like save, semi, burst, and full auto. Got the reloading logic set up. Got the examples for the bolt action for you to kind of use as a base reference. I guess I can show you the bolt action and building that out. That might be a little bit interesting. I can remove the muzzle device because that should actually not be in that position. So let's remove the default parts. And it should just be the bolt, and that should be it. And then I want to do the barrel. I want to be able to attach a muzzle device to that. So I'm going to add a part component. I'm going to add, I'll do the suppressor as the example or the preview mesh. Like so. There we have that. And then I'll add the suppressor as one of the possible parts, as well as the flash hider. All right, so now we can go through and I'll just switch to it and we can build out the Remington from the ground up pretty much. All right, so let's go ahead and play. I have the stock, I have the bolt, I have the pick rail, I have the barrel, and then I can add the suppressor or the muzzle device, all like so. And everything still animates. So I fire. Well, actually I can go through and add a mount with whichever optic I want. Add the first focal plane. Go through and shoot. And as you can see, I am not recycling the bolt, but when I lift up the left mouse button for the example, that's how I have it set up to fire. It cycles, and it also has it set up to where it stops aiming whenever you are firing, or not firing, whenever you're cycling the bolt and or reloading. So I shoot, I don't let go of the left mouse button, I let go. It cycles and goes back to aiming automatically. So same thing with reloading, I aim and I press R, it stops aiming, it goes through and it starts reloading. Close the bolt and starts aiming automatically again. Have the high and low port position. That automatically aims as well whenever you release it. So that allows you to do things like, you can see the effect of a long gun with the system. There's those little bugs again that I gotta figure out. So I don't know exactly why it does all that. It's kind of annoying. But you go to high port, you can rush through your doorway and all that kind of stuff. So yeah. One thing I noticed actually just then was an issue with the high and low port. So when I go manually and then I walk through the doorway, when it hits it, it triggers it. So I got to fix that. So I got to make it so when you're in, you already have high port set, it cannot override it. So that is something I'm going to add to the to-do list real quick. Alrighty, wrote down that little note, and I think we are good to go. So that is pretty much everything that there is to know about the plugin, how to set everything up, how to make use of it. There's all the parts that you need that I can think of. And if you have any recommendations for parts to add or features to add for the firearms, I would absolutely love to hear them because obviously, as you can tell by the name, I want this to be kind of the ultimate FPS plugin, so it has pretty much everything. So I've been building this as a view of what I would like to see. So I would kind of like to know, what would you like to see? So keep in mind for those suggestions, make them something that should be kept in terms of the plugin. So for example, the firing logic, that is taken out of the plugin and just done with an example. And the reason for that is people were going to probably want to use their own type of projectiles, like from Easy Ballistics or something like that. Or they might want their own type of reloading system, similar to that of Tarkov's. Or they might want a reloading system like Call of Duty, Insurgency, whatever. So that way they can build their own system and they're not either being held back by mine or just having a bunch of extra code and functionality kind of cluttering whatever that is that they want to make. Because I tried working with that, and I can tell you right now, I stripped out a lot of the code and just built some basic functions to help with it, and that made it a giant pain in the butt. So I eventually just said screw it and switched out to this type of system, and it started working out really well. It made it a lot easier. So I just had events that could be overridable in C++ or Blueprint, and that helped a good bit. And now that I'm saying this, I look at this and I realize I forgot to show you one of the zeroing kind of mechanics. So I'll do that here shortly, and probably in the next video. So keep your suggestions kind of like what would be a good fit for the plugin that other people can use. So at this point, the firearms for the most part are pretty much set in stone. They're done and good to go. Would you like to see any other specific types of parts, for example? Like we have scopes, magnifiers, red dots, all that kind of stuff. We have thermals, night vision, lights, lasers, flippable mounts. What else would you like to see? Alrighty, so that pretty much covers it. If you're interested in this plugin, hopefully by now the link will be in the description. Unless I screwed up somewhere and I got to make a fix for the submission. But yeah, I'll see you in the next video of whatever that may be. So take care.